Hi, and I'm here with Clara Hughes, Touch Nace, Hummingbird, and we're in the territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and we're so happy. I'm so happy to have you here, Clara, and thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule and day to share some words with us and some teachings, really, about some of the parts of your life, but also some of the things that we've talked about over the years. So I'm really excited that you're here and helping us launch off the show that is going to be here on CJNY at 106.3 The Journey. So I'm really, really excited to have you here today. So thanks for being here, Clara.
Thanks so much, Tewanee, and what a perfect name for the program or the station, The Journey. It's I know this is the Tewanee Joseph show, but we're all on a journey, right? And hopefully our journeys can connect together. And our connection is so strong and goes back so many years now. So I'm grateful to be here as your inaugural guest.
Well, thank you so much. And also the thing about it, when we talk about journeys like the sport and, sport for many of our people, Indigenous peoples is so important, but also your journey as multiple, medal winner in the summer and winter sports. And obviously, we connect during the lead up to the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games, but maybe you can just share with us a little bit about your journey in sport. I think it's always so important to hear people's stories and personal stories and where they come from.
Yeah, I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Grew up in the big city there in the flat prairies with the ice cold winters and the big windy days. And I played community sport growing up, Tewanee. I didn't know what the Olympics were. And quite frankly, I didn't really care what they were. I was too busy getting into a whole lot of trouble as a young person. And, my path as a young, teenager definitely went in a delinquent direction, just trying to make sense of family life, of home life, of the world as I knew it that didn't make any sense at all. And, what worked for me at the time and where I found my community was getting into some trouble as a kid with, things like drugs and alcohol and not going to school. And I found my place with friends that way. And what changed for me was when I saw the Olympics on television. I saw the 1988 games. I saw speed skating for the first time. They were in Calgary over on Treaty 7 territory. And I saw, the nations come together there in the opening ceremony. And then I saw Gaetan Boucher skate, and it really changed my life, Tewanee. It gave me a dream. It planted a seed inside of me. And if anything, I can say it transformed my entire life because I kind of had the audacity that I could believe that I could skate one day for Canada. And I soon realized my first practice for speed skating, I went from ringette and hockey to those long blades. I realized I had a lot to learn. And if I wanted the chance to try to train and represent my province, I had to do good in other areas of my life. So sport really transformed me as a young person. It gave me discipline. It taught me discipline. It gave me the environment which I could practice that discipline in. It got me off of drugs and alcohol. It got me back in school and brought me not just to the Winter Olympics, to 3 games in total, 2002, 2006, 2010, of course, there's where we came together, but also to the Summer Olympics as a bike racer. I was recruited into that sport of road cycling and velodrome racing, and I represented Canada in the 96 games in Atlanta, the 2000 games in Sydney, Australia, and then finally my last Olympics in London, 2012, bike racing for Canada. So it was quite a journey, 23 years in all. And, there's so many ups and downs. It's it represents life. Of course, we learn, we grow, we fail, we succeed, but sport is something that has transformed me in every single way. And I do truly believe in the power of sport, how it can transform and change lives and give people opportunities and dreams, no matter what level you practice sport at. The recreational level of physical activity to the highest level of sport, of representing your nation, your community, or your country. I really believe in the power it holds.
Yeah, you talk about, the power of sport, and often people think, there's so much that goes into training and, being prepared, all those things. But also there's moments, when you travel for sport and you go and compete, were there some moments, out of any of those games that you remember, maybe from each one actually, that can, sometimes it's a person you meet, maybe it's somebody that you talk to, and those parts, you bring with you those memories forever, because in our culture, it's so important, the stories and the teachings that we talk about so often. But are there some moments from some of those games that you can share with us?
There's so many moments, but as a young athlete, Tewanee, I represented Canada the first time in Atlanta in 1996. And that for me was a time when I was really struggling with my mental health. I went from being that delinquent young person to being really good at sport and celebrated. And I made my first Olympics, and you would think that it would be, everything would be positive and hopeful. But inside of me, I was really desperate to have something to show that I was something, because those feelings of hopelessness and feeling really lost were still inside of me, even though I was succeeding. I earned 2 medals at my first games. And after those games, only months later, I went into my first mental health crisis. And I had the next 2 years of my life were a deep struggle where I didn't know who I was. I didn't feel like I had anything to live for, even though I had these Olympic medals. I got through that through receiving help and support and realizing I couldn't do everything alone. And that led me to my next games in Sydney, Australia. And this is what I want to share, is that I was at those games. I was not in medal winning shape because I had the whooping cough. I was really, really sick.
Yep.
And my coach, Eric Vandenine, convinced me to go and to try. And he said, Clara, you'll never know what that day can hold unless you go and try to do something. You have so much inside of you. You've come so far. Let's just go and see what's possible. And I'll never forget being at the opening ceremony and watching Kathy Freeman light the torch for not only, of course, for her country, Australia, but for her people, and feeling the power of that moment when that small, amazing endurance speed machine and track and field in the 400 meters, as she held the Olympic flame there, lighting it, I felt like she's lighting this for so many people, for so many young people. And it really showed me the power of sport in that moment. And going on to see her succeed and winning an Olympic gold medal at home for everyone there, it was something I'll never forget. And it brought me back to my own playing field with an idea of just trying and seeing what was possible and not giving up, and setting the example of not giving up on yourself. And for me, that ended up coming in second last place, and also in sixth place in one of the best races of my life, and then back to the ice and speed skating. So the power of sport, the power of setting an example, of showing what is possible, is something that's not lost on me. And I've seen it time and again.
It's amazing you mentioned that, because in our communities and such, sometimes it's the journey, really it is, and sometimes, so much emphasis put on just only winning, but also sometimes, when you don't win, you actually do win. You can succeed in other ways, and it sounds like that was experienced down in Australia for you. And Kathy was an amazing inspiration. I remember watching her, and the flame as an Indigenous woman, Indigenous person, being at the forefront. It was amazing.
It really, I have goosebumps and I'm almost crying just thinking about her in that moment and who she continues to be. The change that she fostered in so many people, and what she showed, who she showed, how she showed, was a moment I think the world connected to. And I also have to mention 2010.
Yeah.
I have to talk about 2010 because for me, I was a mature athlete at that time. I was 37 years old, going into my third Winter Olympics, my fifth games. I was the defending Olympic champion. And at that time in my life, T, I thought I knew everything about sport, and I thought I knew a lot about life as well. But the connection that we made, I made with all of you in the Four Hosts First Nations and all of the nations, the skate day we had at the Richmond Olympic Oval, all the kids coming from the communities, all the kids that came through the snowstorm from Liwat to come and skate and have fun. You all showed me what it means to connect, what it means to be present, what it means to let yourself find your wings and fly in the moment. Those games were something that remained so special in my life because of our connection. Connecting with you and with your whole family and all of the nation members of all of the nations that hosted those games was something that brought me to a level that the Olympic movement itself could never have brought me to. And everything I did in those games, that beautiful skate, the bronze medal skate that day in the 5,000 meters, was fueled from the energy of everybody I met through all of you. And I will never, ever forget it.
Nor will I. I had a chance to. I didn't get a chance to go to many events during 2010, but I came for yours, and it was amazing seeing Peter there and seeing everyone there and supporting you, lifting, and what we say is chin chin stwite, like holding and lifting each other up, and our communities really came together, the young people, the elders, and you really left a huge impact in our community still to this day. I talked to some of our elders, and they ask about you and how you're doing, and it goes back to that first time you'd requested that meeting to meet with the youth, in our community. And, the invitation is very, very important in our culture, and so as after our meeting happened, and people don't know this story exactly this way, but it's just, you and Peter were there, and it just offered for you to come to dinner sometime. And you both accepted, and, it was 3 PM. And, I had to phone my wife and let her know that we had dinner guests, in a couple of hours. So I quickly had to tell my wife and that I'm going my way to the grocery store. I'll pick up stuff and we'll be ready. And she's like, okay. Cause we had 2 young boys at the time, and my daughter's a little bit older, but it was the importance that you accepted the invitation. And I think that was for us life changing, and to hear your story and to hear, what you wanted to do in these games in Vancouver, to really connect with the people of the lands. And I'll never forget that's what your words were to me and the youth in our communities. And so it was a bright shining moment for you, but it was a bright shining moment for all of us and for Canada, which I thought was just an incredible time. It really was a time like no other, for sure.
A time like no other. And Tewanee, it was a time of connection, of powerful connection. And, I look all these years later now and I see all the connections that continue to be made. I look at all of the impacts, right now of MST and all the work that's being done. It's just amazing, and it's, something that I feel so grateful to be connected and continually influenced by. So the teachings have been great for me and for Peter and our lives and how we go about our days and how we go about being in all these different places, and just slowing things down and having that respect and appreciation is something I learned from all of you. And I'm really grateful for those life lessons and the lessons of sport, and like, as we said at the beginning, the power of sport, the power it holds to connect, not only with each other, but with ourselves as well. And I think if we can do that more, we'd probably all be in a better place.
That's the thing about it, it's really the power of sport. There's so many parts to it, that when you think about it, sport brings you together with others too, right? And whether you're competing as an individual sport or as a team sport, you really do come together. And a lot of those teachings, what I found in working on games and other games elsewhere and those types of things, is like the teachings in our community are really the same. It's about family. It's about supporting one another. It's about wanting to do better, but also connecting with others. And that's a big part of our culture too. It's the experiences that you can, connect with other people, but also the lessons that you can share with one another. And I think that's something about our culture that people are learning more and more about now, is that, we've been here, but also we're here and eager to share. And we're, respectful people. We're passionate people. We're humorous people. The elders are, some of the most incredible, they should be comedians in traveling the world, and doing those things. But the power of sport brings so many different parts of people together, and it's been unreal. And for us, Clara, being able to not only share that experience of you being there, but also some of our culture, and being able to share our culture and come into our community and, have our elders with you and helping lift you up, I think was important for us in our community. That, like I said, it's remained, and those stories get retold. And that's part of our oral teachings, as we tell these stories over and over again. And as you've traveled the world, with sport, I think, being able to share those teachings and other teachings that you've gained across the country, I believe, and the roles that you've played. And it's kind of like adventure, like it's been this adventure that you've gone on, beyond after your time of competition. But what are some of the other things that you've kind of worked on beyond sport, and after you've kind of moved on to a different part of your life?
Oh yeah, Tewanee, the adventure continues. And, I always look at life in that way. I've had the privilege and the teachings of looking at life in that way. Of just saying yes as often and as frequently as I can to adventure. And saying yes to adventure in my life means being married to Peter Guzman, my husband, who I met 27 years ago. And Peter, when we met, a couple months later, we met down in Oregon on a friend's ranch, mutual friends in Eastern Oregon. And we wrote letters to each other and corresponded that way. And one of his letters said, I'm planning on going on a walk. And in my head, I'm like, what's a walk? I'm from Winnipeg. I don't know what a walk is. You just see so far away that you don't even think about walking there in Winnipeg. But Peter, being from Oregon and, being someone who's always been so motivated to be outside and to hike trails and to be in nature, he taught me the power of nature and the healing powers of nature and the adventure that lies in these beautiful places in the world. And his walk meant flying down to Cabo San Lucas and walking to Tewanee, walking the entire Baja Peninsula. I'd never heard of anyone doing this, Tewanee. And so he would write me letters the entire way. This is back in 1997. So we didn't have our smartphones and all the connectivity that we have these days. So I would receive these handwritten letters of the experiences of the people he met along the way, the adventure, the search for water, and how the locals would never guide him wrong. They would always tell him the right way to go and make suggestions. And Peter's fluent in Spanish. His culture is Mexican. His parents are both Mexican. Peter's born in Oregon, but he grew up in that culture. So for him, being in Baja, it feels very much like being at home. And so I really was so keen on learning how to do this thing called walking, which is ironic because I had spent a lot of my life trying to be the fastest person in the world on the bike at that point, and then on speed skates. And so it was really contagious, this zest for adventure. And since I've met Peter, I became a hiker as well, and a long distance bike tourist and a kayaker on the ocean. And, I've hiked tens of thousands of kilometers in my life now. And it's not only been a physical pursuit, it's been more of a mental health and well-being pursuit and connecting to myself in a way that I haven't been able to do in other areas of life so well, because there's always so much going on. And when I've gone on these journeys, some of them lasting up to 137 days, for example, walking
Wow.
the continental divide, the spine of the continent from Mexico to Canada, or the Pacific Crest Trail, from the border, the political border of Canada and America down to the Mexican and American political border, all, 4,650 kilometers of that. I did that one alone. And the connection I've made with myself and the healing work that has happened along the way kind of organically has been so profound in my life. So adventure is something that I always encourage people, say yes to it. Even if it means saying yes to yourself the day that you're having a lot of struggles and you feel like you can't get anything right, even getting out and going for a walk around the block can shift things for you. Being in, a park, being with trees, like trees are not judging you. They will just be with you, and you could feel it when you let yourself feel it. And so these are teachings, of course, I've learned from many people in Indigenous communities, including yourself, Tewanee, and your community have taught me the connection that you can make with the natural world and all that grows and lives in it. But I've learned that from Peter as well, and it's been very powerful in my life.
That is powerful. And when you talk about, over 4,600 kilometers, is am I correct in saying that?
You are.
There's a lot of time. So one, like how long would that typically take, or how many days would something like it's really mind blowing to me because, on that front, but also the journey that you go on in self, I think, as you move along that path of walking along that. So, how long would it take to do something like that? But also, are there some things that you go through in terms of, like we talk about the sport of lacrosse is medicine, what you're talking about also is medicine.
Absolutely. I guess you could say movement as medicine. And okay, so let's talk about the Pacific Crest Trail, which is obviously the western side of the continent and of the United States of America. It's a trail system that connects public lands and private lands and all the spaces along the Pacific crest of mountain ranges and down into the Mojave Desert. And so I hiked that in 2019, and it took me 99 days. So the mileage was 2,750 miles. So 99 days, including any and all days off. I had 5 days completely off during the walk. And I don't know, I guess I have a lot of endurance. Even when I'm moving slower, I guess I do move pretty fast, but I ended up hiking more than a marathon a day in the average mileage. And I was by myself. So I just listened to my body and listened to what I felt like I wanted and needed to do and could do. And ended up reaching the southern terminus 99 days later. And I could hardly believe it. And I was so excited. I wasn't tired, and I just was almost sad that it was over, because when I took that last step, I knew that journey was complete, and I was so grateful, but I almost wanted more in a greedy way, because the transformation that happened on that journey, being alone almost the entire time, because going in the southern direction, most hikers hike that trail northbound. I was going southbound. So by the time I got past the high Sierra Mountains in the middle of California, there really weren't many people out there. And at one point, I didn't see a single other person for 7 days.
Wow.
So literally, yes, I started talking to myself. I would sing. I would talk to trees. I would talk to yucca trees and cactus and rocks. I just felt a connection because I didn't have any distractions. And being in that space, I felt like I was able to make a connection with place, space, and self that I had never experienced in my life. And when I say that, specifically what I mean is I would be walking and emotions would come to me. And instead of doing things that I might do at home to maybe not feel something difficult, a memory, a feeling, a sensation, I would just be with it. Something that caused pain, something that made me maybe feel bad, that would make me feel some angry, or happy. Joy, feeling the whole spectrum of human emotion would come through me. And instead of trying to get away from the negative side of that or hold on to the positive, I found myself in a place of just allowing myself to be that emotion and letting that emotion run its course, not to try to hold on to the good and not try to let go of the bad. I just was allowing myself to really feel and be everything that was happening inside of me. And so the body connection outside of the connection of the sound of my feet on the ground, on the different surfaces of earth, the beating of my heart, my breath, it reminded me of, in some ways, walking into the opening ceremony of the Vancouver Olympics and walking into the sea of dancers from all across Turtle Island and the Inuit homelands, the Inuit Nunangat and Métis homelands. And in the center field where so many of them had their drums and were beating their drums. And I remember the teachings of that being the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And I felt that many times on my hike. I just felt like, this is the earth that I'm hearing and feeling be so alive to me, because in my culture, those are not the teachings, obviously. But I really felt that connection out there, and it was a really beautiful one, and one that helped me heal a lot of, what I struggled with as a young person. And that's, will always live inside of me. It helped me connect with that in a respectful way and a meaningful way, and in a way that helped me reconcile a lot of things inside. So very much a healing path, very much a process of movement as medicine. And it's something that I go to time and time again. I think it's why I return to the trail, to try to do some of that healing work, to allow for the environment where healing happens.
It's so true, and our elders in our community talk about everything's living. The rocks, the trees, like everything around us is living, and your connection to that is so important. That in the story that you share that way, and I think that's part of the journey and movement. As medicine is so important, and taking that time to do that and to accept it and to accept those feelings and emotions that you have in you as you go on the 99 days that you went, but also it continues on in life too, and I think it's a good place to go to. And you must have met some incredible people on a journey like that. There's been some stand out to you.
So many people. I mean, and so many of the people that really stand out to me, they might not be the people on the trails, hiking the trails. They're the people where, I just hiked the Arizona Trail this last fall and winter. So that was another big hike, 1,300 kilometers. And I was getting down closer to the border where the trail would end. And I didn't have a way of getting back to the city to get a flight home to come home. And I was starting to think about how am I going to swing this? The border's in a really weird remote place. And I arrived at a trailhead and there was a fellow there on his mountain bike. He was out for a mountain bike ride just to see the setting sun. And he chatted with me and I was getting water from a water storage thing at the trailhead. And he said, "Hey, so I see all the hikers coming through here. I try to help them out. How are you getting back from the border?" And I said, "I have no idea." And he said, "Well, maybe I can help you." And I said, "What's your phone number?" So this guy his name Ed, and I took his phone number, and I don't think he really realized I was going to follow through, but I started messaging him as I was getting closer and closer. I'm like, "Okay, Ed, I'll be there at 11:30 a.m. And Ed came and picked me up, and he drove 3 hours out of his way to help me out, a complete stranger. And, he was going through some things in his life. And so on our drive back, I just listened and, just gave him some listening space, and it seemed like it helped him sort a lot of things out as well. So, it's just amazing for me how many people help, how many people, give you a helping hand, help you out on your journey, and offer. It doesn't have to be anything tangible like a ride or water or food. It can be encouragement, because sometimes you can feel really alone in what you're doing. And if someone just asks you, "Hey, where have you come from? What are you doing? Where are you going?" It makes you feel like you exist. And it's never lost on me that people take the time to say hello and to offer that encouragement. And I try to bring that into life, because I think we don't encourage each other enough. And I think we're all so busy, and life can be so busy that we forget to make time for someone who might just need to be seen. And it might make the difference in their day. And so the trail continues to teach me so much. I've met so many characters on the trail. I've met 85-year-old hikers. I've met 16-year-olds that are walking these long distances. I've met families hiking these trails. And I've met just, they're called the trail angels of the trail, the support network along the way of just human kindness. And it's a beautiful thing.
When I was growing up, some of our elders, they would just, encourage you and be positive about things, but also they knew, how they could support and help, but also guide and those types of things. And that encouragement, that support's so important just in life. And I didn't know as a young person how important that was. And, you take those things that maybe people don't think about so often, like you said, like the encouragement or the positiveness, and, being positive in life, it's such an important part. And that's one thing that I've taken from you and being around you and Peter, is that your positiveness of life and what you want to do, and whether it's hiking or doing other things in life or kayaking or connecting with nature, those are so things that we take too as a family, and living every day, trying to have a positive attitude of, and even though things may be tough, you can still move through, right? And you will get through them. And I think that's so important. And I think, mental health, we talked earlier about mental health, and that's something that, is so important, and for people to not only understand, but recognize, there's things that do happen. And, maybe when we grew up, when we were younger, it wasn't something that was talked about so much. Right. And so, but I think it's important. And for me in my life, it's important that I do talk about those things with people. And I think and be real and true. And because with that, people will be real and true to you that can support you and help you. But mental health was an important part. I know after 2010, you did a ride right across this country, raising awareness about mental health. And it was so important. I was so happy and so proud to see you out there doing those things, and how it made such a positive impact on many people. You may not even know it, but I talked to so many people, that were watching you and supporting you, or going out to where you were riding through in the communities. But maybe we could talk a little bit about mental health, but also maybe some of the things that you've experienced, or some of the teachings that you can share with us.
Yeah, T, so much of it is how we show up for each other, but how we show up for ourselves. Life teaches you and conditions you as a baby, even in the womb, can give you a lot to carry for the rest of your life. And as young people, there's no way that you know how to hold that, how to make sense of it. And we're not often taught to look back at those experiences and find out what they are. and to live, to spend time with them. And now with the conversation of mental health, it's very interesting. Like you mentioned, like we're both vintage 1972ers. Yes, good
Yes,
year.
absolutely.
And when we were young, definitely there was no mental health conversation. There was no device to have an app to track your sleeping and track your moods and everything that is available. Like this enormous, all these different sources of availability for mental health supports that are there right now, yet there's so many areas that are lacking. And many of the elements that offer support can be seen, I think, scientifically proven as the source of some of the problem. These devices and the addiction to them and the screens that are drawing us closer and closer into them, and these virtual worlds that are drawing people in, take us away from the connection to very real life experiences, connecting with nature, connecting with space, place, and self. And for myself, it's been quite a journey, learning and getting an education on early childhood trauma, first of all, learning my own story, second of all. But I've always been in this place for many years now of, what do I do with this now? Okay, I understand all of this. I can see why I have these patterns and why they keep repeating themselves. And I have these survival mechanisms that don't quite work in my adult life. But yet I don't know where to go. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I don't want to go back to, this is why I act this way, or this is why I feel this way. What can I do with this? And I think we're still so far from understanding what healing